Warm greetings for Requirement Engineering Chapter 4 Module 1. Myself Jagadish, Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science, Canara Engineering College. So topics covered in this video session is requirements elicitation and analysis, requirements validation, and requirements engineering. So in this requirement elicitation and analysis process, we have been left with some topics. In that we have requirement discovery. The process of gathering information about the required and existing systems and the distilling the users and systems requirement from this information. Interaction with the system stakeholders from managers to external regulators. So systems have a range of stakeholders. So in the requirement discovery, we used to get the basic information or some sort of information related to the system by the various stakeholders. So by showing some examples to the stakeholders, so of users and the system requirements, then getting information from the stakeholders. So something we are keep on discovering till he has to get satisfied by his requirements to the stakeholders, by the stakeholders to the software engineering. So in this interviewing we have another, that is getting a basic requirements from the stakeholders. One is formal interviewing and informal interviewing to get some requirement engineering process. In that we have two types of interviewing. One is closed interview as well as open interview. In closed interview we have a pre-set of list of questions. The stakeholder has to answer to that list of questions. For example, if the software engine, if the system has to be developed by the software engineering, he give a set of questions. So what type of framework is required, what type of programming language is required, and whether he is satisfied with this the requirement what is said in that requirement list. Question in the list of question is there in the list, predetermined list. So he has to keep on answering to that questions. So that is what closed interview. Some set of predefined question will be there in the list. In the open interview, there will be a various issues. That is, the software engineering will keep on exploring the stakeholders by asking some or other questions related to the system. So he has to get a full information of the system for the development. So this is the types of interviewing: closed interview as well as open interview. So effective interviewing: be open-minded, avoid preconceived ideas about the requirements, and are all willing to listen to the stakeholders. Prompt the interview to get a discussion going with this springboard question, requirement proposal, or by working together on a prototype system. So interview in practice normally will be a closed or open-ended interviewing. That is, interviews are good for getting a overall understanding of the what stakeholders do and how they might interact with the system. So interviewing with the stakeholders will get some more information about its system. So it will be helpful for the stakeholder, that is software engineers, to develop the system. So interviews are not good for understanding the domain requirement. So what type of domain is required for the development of the system, that type of that is not good for the in the interview to adopt the or to know about the domain requirements. So another type of getting a elicitation analysis requirement by the stakeholder is scenarios. So scenario, something like giving a real-time examples or real examples to the stakeholders to better understand of its its system before developing. So he can say, so this is what by showing some real-time example or scenarios, so you can suggest that, so this is not the system I want, so you can add up some more requirement to the that is like a real-time example scenarios, so to get his own product. So this is another type of getting a requirement from the stakeholders. So something they include a starting situation, normal flow of events, how the modules or submodules will flow can be shown with the help of the scenarios, and description of what go wrong. So description. So if stakeholders may require some modules to be added, so if that type, if that module is added, so what may go wrong in his system, he can shown in the some giving you some description. So that is the help of the scenarios, and information about concurrent activities and description of the state when the scenario finishes, that will be given by the software engineer to the stakeholders or maybe customer. So another set of information or getting a requirement from the stakeholder is use case diagrams. So use case is a UML, that is Unified Modeling Language. This is one type of a language that is pictorial representation, showing pictorial representation to the stakeholders of his system. A set of use cases should describe all possible interaction with the system. It uses a graphical modules. Sequence diagram may be used to add detail to use cases. There are, one is use case, it shows some pictorial representation, and sequence diagram is also a part of in the UML diagram, where it shows a full detail instead of giving a brief description, writing up information. It is always better. So pictures talks a lot than the sentences. So same way here for the customer, if by showing a pictorial representation, he can understand better as well of this his own system. So use case is a one diagram, and another diagram is sequence diagram. It gives a detailed description of this system. So one example for the mental health care patients management system. So here you can see the medical receptionist, nurse, doctor and manager, and we call these four as actors, and these are all the subsystems. So medical receptionist, so when the mental there is patient enters to the hospital, medical receptionist register the patients. So in the register patient you have so many sub models. So here they have shown the main model, that is register patient, and view personal information of the, if it is already registers. So overall can visit, manager can view the personal information of the patient, and once over this, the nurse can view the record of the previously visited record, or a new record can be viewed, and edit record as per as a doctor prescription. The nurse can edit the record, that is prescription record, and there is doctor can set up a there is consultation to the next visit, or maybe if he wants to visit to the some other hospital, so he can edit and store the information. So doctor can edit or view record, edit record, as well as set up consultation. At the same time, he can generate the report of the patients. Overall, he has been checked the patient, or overall visited to the hospital on particular day, and manager can view the personal information as well as export the whole information of the patient of the day, or maybe week, or maybe month. So this is what one of the example of the mental health care patient management system by using use case. So if you give this information to the customer, he can better understand, as well as so this is what is required for this system, and the next team for the development, this entire thing, if we give it back to the next for design and implementation team, they will easily can start doing their work. So another one is ethnography. Ethnography is also getting some information from the stakeholders. These are all different types of and there is elicitation and analysis process, where we go to get information from the stakeholders for the development. So ethnography is also one among them. So it is just giving explanation of the article articulate work. So it will be in some like table format. So overall I have done work, and what type of information is given by the stakeholders will be column. We make it in a table and deliver to the next users. So ethnography studies have shown the work usually richer and more complex than the suggested by the system models. The scope of the ethnography: requirements that are derived from the way that the people actually work rather than way I which process. Definition suggested that they how to work. Requirements that are derived from the cooperation and awareness of other people activities. Ethnography is effective for understanding the existing system process. So you should, I'm stressing this word because here this is also showing an existing process system by the developers, but cannot identify new features that should be added to the system. So one of the drawback that new features cannot be added to the system. So ethnography and prototyping for the requirement analysis. So ethnography analysis, so meeting with the stakeholders and getting a new prototype for the system, and focused of the new changes, and that is start developing a prototype, new prototype for the system, and the system prototyping will be matching with the new prototype is being analyzed, and that is what generic system development. So the separate code or the existing system development will be added to the system prototyping, and analyzing the existing prototyping with the previously the changes what is required by the customer. Then it has been checked with the newly developed prototyping with the focused ethnography team, and analyzing the existing as well as new subsys, new prototyping. And if it is that is good, then it has been good means if it is satisfied by the developers of the next team, then it has been delivered to the next system. So requirement validation is the next there is a software specification. In this, concerned with the demonstrating that the requirements define the system that the customer really wants. Requirements error cost are high, so validation is very important. So there are different types of requirements validation or requirement checks. In this, validity check, consistency check, completeness check, realism check, and verifiability check. So in the validity check, does the system provides the functions with best support to the customer needs? That is validity check. So as per as the customer requirements of the that is the software engineer have been developed is been checked in the validity check, and consistency check are the requirements there any conflict in the requirements as per as customer given the requirement, is it met by the software engineer, it's been consistently by the all the modules, it's been checked in the consistency that is check. Completeness as a whole system, as a, all the functions are met by the customer, is been checked in the completeness check. Realism check, can the requirements by implemented given available budget and technology, the budget what is given by the customer as well as technology really met by the software engineering is checked in the realism check. Verifiability as a whole system once again checked and delivered to the next team. So this is what different types of requirement checks. One is validity check, consistency check, completeness check, realism check, and verifiability check. So requirement validation technique, in this we have a different there is requirement review, prototyping, test case generation. So in the requirement review, so before delivering the system to the customer, so there will be a requirement review as far as there is some standards. So systematic manual analysis of the requirements as far as the requirement of the customer systematically will be reviewed by the separate team. So that is what requirement review. Prototyping, using an executable model of the system to check the requirement is covered. Prototyping means we have different types of modules, so to check the requirement has been met. So depending on that prototyping, checking the system and releasing to the customer. Test case generation, so by giving the software engineering inputs and checking the output, then once again checking the input from the given by the customer, then getting the output as per the customer requirement is being checked in the test case generation. So developing the tests for the requirement to check the testability. For example, you can see our ERP. In the ERP, we are giving the USN number as a to check the student list. So instead of USN number, if we give his name or some other related to the student information, whether we get the information to see the whether the student has paid the fees or not. Such type of information can be checked as we call as a test cases. So ultimately, the requirement is to check the student details by giving his USN number. So alternate ways of giving the to check the system is been defined in the test cases, and once it is satisfied, it is been released to the customer. So requirement reviews, so regular reviews, that is both client and contract staff should be involved in the review. So client is nothing but stakeholders, and contractor maybe the software engineer or any of the one who gave the tool to develop to the software engineer. In front of him will be review the system, and review may be formal or informally will be done, that is by with complete documents, or maybe by giving some inputs to the what to say, to the system. And review checks verifiability, comprehensibility, traceability, adaptability. Verifiability is a requirement, realistic, testable. So realistically tested, the software is being checked in the verifiability by giving a proper input and proper getting a proper output. By the validity check is been done, is been verified once again in the verifiability. So before checking or validation, if you just releases the system to the customer, so he maybe end up with some problems or bugs in the when he start using the system, or when we start using in the business. So at that time it's very difficult there is bug to clear the error. So the software engineer has to trace out all the way he has to spend a lot of time. He has to stop the project which is an ongoing project, and he has to trace out all this, because there was a contract between the employee as well as company, as well as company with the client. So it will be very difficult. So before delivering to the customer, it is always better to check, to have a various test phases. So once the validation check is over, then review team has to be checked once again whether the validation team has done proper work or not. Is being checked by the review team. So comprehensibility is the requirement probably understandable by the validity check is being checked. Traceability, origin of the requirement clearly stated. So origin of the requirement by the customer is clearly stated as per as the customer, and is being satisfied by the validity team is being checked. Adaptability, can the requirement be changed without a large impact on the requirement? So if any changes is required by the customer, if it is being changed, there should not be any large changes to the system. So that also been checked by the review team, that is was adaptability check. So last part is a requirement management. What actually requirement management does? So requirement management is a process of managing the changing requirement during the requirement engineering process. Once again, I am going to repeat, requirements management is a process of managing the changing requirement during the requirement engineering process and the system development. New requirements, whenever the customer says some requirement is required, emerges as a system is being developed, and after it has gone into use. You need to keep track of the individual requirements and maintain a links between dependent requirements so that you can assess the impact of the requirement changes. So changing requirements, so when is there is changing is required, one is the business and technical environment of the system always changes after the installation. You may see most of our mobiles is getting updated new OS. So once to when you buy the mobile today, so next year a new OS will be get into the market. So it has to get updated. If your mobile is not get updated, then is no use of using your mobile. So as per as business techniques, so our mobile has to also get updated, mobile or maybe our laptops has to get updated to the new OS. So our client will be have an agreement with the that is the developers, that is at least for 1 year or 2 years there should be our system has to get updated. So that type of that is agreement will be done. So that's what the change requirement says. The people who pay for the system and users of that systems are rarely the same people. So system customer imposes requirements because of organization and budgetary constraints. The same thing what I explained in as taking by examples of the mobile as well as laptop, the same thing they have explained here. So changing requirements. So large system usually have a diverse user community with many users having a different requirements and priorities that may be conflict or a contradictory. So you can see the evolution of a diagram. So initially understanding of the problem, that is initial requirement is for example take it as your mobile itself, the mobile which is been developed last year, as well as you have identified the problem, that is new operating system has been come into the market, it has to get updated. So your mobile developer as well as there is a client has been agreemented with the developer. So any changes have been occur, it has to get updated such a way that they have designed the software. So when the new requirement came into existence, then our the system get updated automatically and change as per as the requirements. So as the time goes, so there is a requirement of the software is also get changes. So this is for the evolution, requirement evolution. So by this we cover the requirement evolution as well as next requirement management planning, how the management has have a done some detailed requirement is given to the developers before agreement. So we'll see establish a level of requirement management detail that is required. Requirement management decision. So requirement identification, change management process, traceability policy, and tool support. In the requirements identification, each requirement must be uniquely identified so that it can be cross-referenced with the other requirements. So what type of requirement? Maybe hardware requirement or maybe software requirement. So whatever it may be, it has to be identified and it has to be cross-verify once again before doing any changes in the system. So change management process. This is a set of activities that assess the impact and the cost of changes. Discuss the result. That's what. So just doing the changes is not there is agreement with the client and the customer. If it is to be changes in any of the software or updated to software, or maybe to updated software has to support some of the hardware. So if it is if he is to do the updated in the software, then he has to change the hardware also. So for that he has to spend money. So that type of agreement has to be made by the customer before itself. Traceability policies. These policies are define the relationship between the each requirements and between the requirements and the system design, and that should be recorded. Whatever the changes has been done, that has to be recorded. Tool support, tools that may be used to range a specialized requirement management, systems to the spreadsheet and simple database. So whichever the tool is required for the support of the system, that has to be recorded, and it has to be even this, that tool has to be get updated in the next. For example, it may be a spreadsheet means Excel or maybe database, or that is what, or that recorded should be maintained in the separate database or maybe in the spreadsheet. Whatever the changes has been done to the software has to be maintained by the developer or by the management system. So what are the that is deciding if the requirement changes should be accepted. When it has to be decided, that is requirement changes should be accepted. So one is problem analysis and change specification, change analysis and costing, one is change implementation. During this stage, the problems or the change proposal is analyzed to check that it is validated. This analysis feedback to change the requester, who may respond with more specific requirement, change proposal, or decide to withdraw the request. So we'll analyze the problem in the existing software. So if it changes, then it will be affected for his business also. That whatever the that is which are what are all the problems will be affected for the customer will be analyzed and getting a feedback to the customer. So at that time customer may decide whether to go for the changes or to be stop the process or to be use what it is existing software. That is been decided in the problem analysis and change specification. And change analysis and costing. So change analysis, if he requires any changes, let him go means he do the changes, and the cost also should be explained to him. So this is what the cost will be happen if we do any changes. If you agree, then will we do the changes. That has been analyzed in the second step. The effect of proposed changes assessed using a traceability information and general knowledge of the system requirements. And decision is made whether or not to proceed with the requirement changes, then it will be decided by the customer. Changing implementation. The requirements document and the necessary design and implementations are modified. Ideally, the document should be organized so that the change can be easily implemented. So whatever the changes has been done as per as customer with the cost also agreed, then it should be documented and do the changes as per as customer requirement. So this is for the requirement management. So you can see the requirement change management, identify the problem and analyze and do the change specification and change analyzing cost. So cost as well as far as the customer change will be analyzed and try to implement that tool or maybe existing application and release the product to the customer. So this is what the requirement change management. By this, we have completed the first module video session. So if you have any doubts, please free to ask in the online classes, or maybe personally you can call and ask the questions. So if you have any doubt, please let me know beginning itself before going to the second module. Yeah, thanking you.